Welcome to Sausage on a Fork, a podcast dedicated to the UK's longest running children's drama programme, Grange Hill. My name's Neil, and in each episode I'll interview a former cast member about their life before, during and after their time on the programme. Welcome to the next episode of Sausage on a Fork. I am unbelievably thrilled to say that I've been joined for this episode by none other than the Queen of Grange Hill, Gwyneth Powell, who played Mrs Bridget McClusky. Gwyneth, welcome to Sausage on a Fork.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here with you.
No, you're very, very welcome. Very welcome. What we'll do, Gwyneth, if we can just, we'll start. If you can just cast your mind back to time even before Grange Hill, and how did you get into acting?
Well, school plays. I was always making up plays as well, you know, even when I was very little. I remember I had a shoebox that I turned into a theatre and bored all the other kids rigid by writing scripts and things when I was able to write. I love going to the theatre. And I think probably one of my earliest memories that made me think I wanted to be an actress was my maternal granny, who had come from a family of 6, 4 girls, and they had been hired out for pantomimes in Manchester.
All right.
Slave labor to do a skipping rope dance.
Right.
And my granny was also, she was a kind of aide to the good fairy, and the good fairy and the demon king were married, and it wasn't very happy. She had to run to the butcher's shop on a regular basis to buy steak to put on the fairy's black eye. There was something about that story that made me feel, yay, I want some of that.
Yeah.
But the real entry, I suppose, and made me change course from being a teacher, which I was trained for.
Right. Okay.
Was that at 16 I saw a notice on the school board saying that Michael Croft was looking for young people who were interested in Shakespeare to join the National Youth Theatre.
All right. Okay.
And was doing regional auditions. So I wrote in, and he had asked that I should do 2 Shakespeare pieces.
Right.
Now, I have to preface this by saying I went to an all-girls school.
Right.
So I thought the best parts were men's parts. So in a yellow crimpling suit that my mother had bought me with a bow on the front, I did an audition for Martin Jarvis, who was ex-Youth Theatre, who I was stunned to see because he was my idol. He was at the Manchester Library Theatre.
Right.
And unfortunately, about 2 weeks before, I had seen him do Henry V,
right,
playing Henry V. And I decided to do Henry V
right,
as one of my audition pieces. So the first piece I did was Once More Unto the Breach, Dear Friends. And the second piece that I chose was Blow Winds and Crack Your Cheeks from King Lear.
Right.
Neither of which, of course, was suitable for a 16-year-old girl in yellow crimpling. And they must have thought that I was so peculiar that they could do with a few more laughs. So they invited me to join the National Youth Theatre. And I stayed with the National Youth Theatre for 5 years.
Right.
Only in summer breaks. What used to happen is that they used to take over a theatre, a dark theatre, an empty theatre in the West End during the summer months.
Right.
And throw a lot of kids from all sorts of different backgrounds, from all parts of the country, and let us loose on London in the swinging 60s. And my contemporaries at the Youth Theatre were now luminaries like Helen Mirren, David Suchet, Alan Armstrong. They could go on. I mean, but at that time we were all just kids.
Yeah.
You know?
I was going to ask if you got to work with anyone, but obviously being in the National Youth Theatre with all those people, it must have been something.
Well, I mean, latterly come to realise that practically everybody you've ever heard of passed through the gates of the National Youth Theatre.
Right.
So,
yeah.
People like Daniel Craig, of course, was National Youth Theatre, not later. And the list goes on. So so that was my entry, really. And because they didn't let me do a lot except darn tights for a while, and run around London with flyers and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was so exciting, and the amount of freedom, because nobody ever knew what we were up to, and and we had a season at the Old Vic, in London, because Laurence Olivier had taken his company with the production of Othello to Moscow.
Right.
And so we used to sleep in the Old Vic,
wow, right.
and do shows on the stage, midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
So yes, it was an extraordinary time, and my final year with them, we were at the Royal Court, and for the first time ever, there was a diversion away from Shakespeare. We did a Ben Jonson play called Bartholomew Fair.
Right.
And I played a character called Fat Earth in Bartholomew Fair. And Pig Woman. She was Pig was a glamorous role with a lot of copy decks on my face for walks and things. And it got some good notices. And suddenly I was confronted by agents wanting to know whether I would join them. And so instead of leaving Goldsmiths and going straight into a teaching job, I went into the theatre.
Right.
And I went down to, it might have been a slightly different career, because the first interview I ever had, and I was notified of this by telegram, because I wasn't on the phone.
Right, okay.
In the days when telegram, was to say that I had an audition at 20th Century Fox for a movie being directed by the legendary George Cukor, who was known as the star maker. I mean, he'd made people like Katharine Hepburn and Audrey Hepburn.
Yeah.
And he was directing this film, and it was a big part. It was an adaptation of a book, name of which I've forgotten, but sort of gypsy girl, opposite Robert Shaw.
Wow, right.
And but it all meant nothing to me. I'd never heard of George Cukor and everything. Yeah. And I had an agent at the time who was really old school, who had an Astrakhan collar and a silver top chain, who met me and took me in to 20th Century Fox.
Yeah. And
I remember reading for George Cukor. And then I had a recall for that, and it was all looking promising. And then the finance, as happens with films, fell through. Right. The film was never.
Oh, right.
So the agent had another idea, and that was to send me down to Worthing Rep as an ASM, cleaning out the lavatories. And I stayed there. First of all, I had a contract there for 6 weeks for the first show. And then that turned into 2.5 years.
Wow.
And then I went to Bristol Old Vic, and I had 2 years there. And in the company there was a young Jeremy Irons.
Wow.
And Tim Piggott-Smith, who'd all just left drama school. Oh. So I've watched a lot of young people turn into very big stars.
Definitely. So then when did the transition from theatre to television take place, or were you running alongside each other?
That was just another piece of serendipity, because at the Connaught Theatre in Worthing, I did Hobson's Choice and played Maggie Hobson, the leading part. And Willie Mossop, my counterpart, had a friend called John Bowen, who was a writer and director, and he came to see it. And he had a commission, unbeknownst to me, to write a series for London Weekend called The Guardians, and suggested me for the juvenile lead in that, which I got. So, which was lucky because I just got married to an impecunious actor, and we got a house, but we had no way of paying the first month's mortgage.
Right, okay.
Or indeed buying a wedding ring. So I wore my mother's wedding ring to the wedding. We had an empty house, really. We had a bed and we had a table, and that was. And then I got the Guardians, and we were secure for 6 months or more with money coming in. Yeah. So that was the first big series. But prior to that, I had done one television for Granada called Rogues Gallery. That was all set in Newgate Jail. And then, as I say, I got the Guardians. And
because I was looking at your CV. I mean, some of your notable performances, you were in like Z Cars and Emmerdale Farm and Coronation Street and Dixon of Dock Green.
I did 6 series of Dixon of Dock Green, playing a different part every time. If Jack Warner liked you, you were in the Dixon rep,
Right.
And that was amazing too, because all the characters that used to pop up, Diana Dawes and Alan Lake, in fact, the producer was the first, because Alan Lake went to jail, of course, Diana Dawes' husband, and Joe Waters, who was producer on Dixon, was the first person to offer him a job in Dixon when he left jail. And I played his wife in that episode.
Right. And then
lots of stories there.
Did you get to work with Nicholas Donnelly on Dixon of Dock Green?
Yes.
Right.
Of course.
Yeah. I was just wondering about whether your paths had previously crossed on there. That was all.
Oh yes. He was the desk sergeant,
but not with the Scottish accents or on that one. No.
Poor Nick. Yes, I think he decided on that Scottish accent without knowing that it would go on for so long.
So that sort of led up through the 70s, and I've noticed another one was you did 6 episodes of Armchair Thriller, always playing a policewoman, or nearly always playing a policewoman.
Two separate series actually. One was called Rachel in Danger. In fact, I was the only person who was given. That was John Bowen again, so he kept me going for a long time. John was very loyal. Usually wrote me into something. The first one was called Rachel in Danger, and I played a policewoman in that. And the second Armchair Thriller that I did was starring opposite Ian McKellen. I played Ian McKellen's wife in that, called Dying Day.
Right.
Yeah.
So then, how did Grange Hill come about then?
Again, I was in, I think it was the Enigma Files, which was a follow-up to Dixon, with Tom Adams, and it was shown on the Sunday night, and on the Monday morning following, I had a call from my agent to say Colin Kent had been on the phone, and he was the producer of a show called Grange Hill, and wondered if you would be interested in playing the headmistress. He's sending a script through. So I knew it was children's television, and I had young nieces and nephew. And so I rang my brother, their father, and said, do the kids know anything about this show called Grange Hill? And so he went away and he said, oh, yes, you've got to do it.
Right.
They've watched it and it's fabulous and you've got to be in it. And I said, right, well, okay, I'll do them a favour then.
Yeah.
if it's that important to them, I better take it.
Yeah.
And of course, I never thought that it would go beyond that series.
No,
Who knew?
Because obviously he came in as Mrs. McClusky, and a legend was born, let's say. And Mrs. McClusky, when she came in, the children probably didn't like her that much because she came in and made her mark on the school, didn't she? She came in and she was very
Yes,
stern,
tough.
very stern,
Yeah.
very strict, reintroducing school uniform and banning the school magazine and
corporal punishment.
oh yeah, that was the other one, giving the cane out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I ask, what was it like filming that scene with Kathy Hargreaves, wasn't it?
I think we giggled a lot, actually.
Yeah. So you didn't really know anything about the show other than your family had said it was amazing and you had to do it.
No, actually, Christine, the first director I worked with was called Christine, and she'd worked on it a lot with Colin Cant, and they were lovely. I mean, they took me out for lunch and talked about it, and and we talked about, fortunately I got that out the way early on, because McClusky, I said, where was she? Where was she from? And they said, we can be from anywhere. And thank God, because I would have been in the same case as Nick Donnelly. I'd have been stuck with an accent that I had to keep on trying to do for 11 years or whatever. So that was, and they just, said, just do what you want with it, really.
Right. Because it was still in its really in its infancy, wasn't it? The program at the time.
Absolutely.
I mean, it was series 4 when you joined. So, but I think it was already sort of making waves, so to speak. And a lot of parents didn't like their children watching it and stuff because of what the children were doing. But fortunately, a lot of parents did let their children watch it. Unfortunately, a lot of children went round to their friend's house to do their homework so that they could watch it as well. So
I was told that by somebody who'd been at Eton, that they had found a way to watch it in a broom cupboard there and sold tickets.
I love that one. Yeah. I love
That's
that.
a kind of Gonch scheme, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Can I ask though, so when you first joined it, obviously the teachers and the staff were sort of on the periphery, weren't they? They were brought in for scenes. It wasn't like they had any storylines of their own. Were you aware of all the other storylines that the children had going on and these big storylines that were being introduced?
Yes.
Right.
Oh yes, yeah.
Yeah. How did you find the relationship between the adults and the children?
Well, I mean, they were whipped away ostensibly to do lessons. I'm not sure how much learning went on,
right.
But they were called in to do their scenes and then they disappeared. And of course, they all clung to each other and, ran around the corridors at BBC at lunchtime and all that sort of thing. And then we all got shipped off to Elstree eventually. But we did mingle in terms of, there was always a Christmas party.
Yeah.
And we did I organized a couple of things that, we did as a spoof for the kids, to entertain the kids.
All right.
Kind of thing. And they did things to entertain us. And, it was, I suppose, a bit like a normal school, because you didn't socialize with they were so much younger than we were. But everybody was very friendly, and it never seemed to be a barrier between. I mean, I remember a very young Sue Tully coming up to me very boldly when we were on location at a school in Hammersmith, which was the first location, and saying to me, what's your favourite film? I said, I can't think. Mine's Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. And I said, oh, right. She said, have you watched it? I said, no. She said, Gene Wilder, fantastic. I'll bring you. And she brought me a copy the next day.
Oh.
And I was so bowled over by her. She was so sure of herself, really. And of course played Suzanne, didn't she? We became enemies on set, but I was always interested. I knew that she would do
Yeah.
something spectacular, and she has, of course, become a wonderful director.
Yeah. And the
And
two of
thinking back,
yeah.
that was she was making her mark then. She was watching films that she really loved and seeing how they played out. And that
I mean, the two of you are in one of Grange Hill's most famous scenes as well, when she walked in dressed as Boy George.
Yes.
And she gives that swagger as she walks away from you. And you do the famous Mrs. McClusky eye roll as she walks away. And I love that scene because I remember thinking, there's no way anyone else could have done what Sue Tully does in that. And I've seen her talk about it. And she said, I don't know why I did that walk away at the end. She said, I was just walking up because she threw that swagger in. I thought, well, it made the scene, didn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
After she'd said to you, I really don't care what you think or something like that.
Up yours.
Yeah, basically, yeah. So obviously, when you were on the program, you got to work with some amazing actors and actresses. Was there anyone who you really enjoyed working with?
Oh yes, I mean Mike Cronin. I loved working with it, and George A. Cooper latterly, Anna Quayle. I mean all of them really. It was a very happy band of actors, you know. And some of them became really close friends, like George and Karen.
No,
and sadly, so many of them have died, haven't they? Great sadness.
I always like when Mr. Bronson was introduced, and you had quite a few scenes there with him, because your two characters, although they wanted the best for the kids, were so polar opposites, weren't they? McClusky and Bronson was so different. What was it like working with him?
It was a good dynamic, wasn't it? I think it played out well dramatically.
Yeah. What was it like working with Michael Sheard?
Yeah, I mean, we hit it off. He was good fun. And we enjoyed those scenes. You know, we both upped our game, I think.
Yeah, definitely. So do you have any favorite storylines or episodes of your own that you were involved with?
There were so many, weren't there? I mean, it's hard to pick out. There are instances rather than
no, that's fine.
Scenes. I remember very early on that a school inspector, a real school inspector, was coming to the BBC.
Right.
They had forgotten to get the licenses for the children. I mean, that was pretty serious.
Yeah.
And it was, so the children were hiding as this guy entered the building with his briefcase and everything. And it was quickly rescheduled to do an adults only scene. And they were hidden all around the set, kids.
Wow.
And they said, no children here. No, we have applied for the licenses and we won't use the children until those licenses appear. Thank you very much. Goodbye. And he went off, and it was just like, it was like a scam that happened in the show.
Yeah.
You know, it was more dramatic than something that happened.
There you go. There's a massive exclusive there on Sausage on a Fork. I wasn't expecting that. Wow. Wow. I could have just asked you there about storylines and episodes, because, as you said, there was so many, wasn't there? You know, the racism and the likes of Jeremy and Danny Kendall dying.
I loved the ones with Scruffy McGuffy, actually.
Yeah.
I loved those episodes. And there was one, wasn't there? Was a school dance.
Yeah, and that's a classic scene as well, you know, because it's all about Claire and Stu Potter's, and they're getting back together, and then Sue comes on as you've just gone for a dance with Scruffy, and again the McClusky eye roll comes out in the middle of that one as well. And so then, just moving a little bit further on, you were Mrs McClusky was head teacher, and then there was the big merger with the other schools, and all of a sudden Mrs McClusky wasn't a headmistress anymore. The never seen Mr Humphreys was who became the headmaster. And again, that was when the likes of Mr Bronson arrived, and Gonch Gardner, and all those characters, like all these amazing characters get introduced, didn't they? But then Mr Humphreys, a bit later on, it was obviously sadly killed. And then Series 9, 1986, which was a massive turning point for Grange Hill with the Just Say No and the drug addiction and everything, and Imelda coming in, and Danny Kendall coming in, and all these people. We just go back to Just Say No. As someone who was on the show, but not really involved with the furore around it, how did you see that? What was that like for yourself? What did you think of it?
I thought it was quite explosive stuff. My concern chiefly, and I expressed this to the powers that be, was that they should make it very clear by putting Lee MacDonald on as many chat shows as possible that he was not a drug addict.
Yeah.
Because I was very concerned when Mark had a tough time having been gripper.
Yeah.
And it was very unpleasant for him, and there was no backup.
Right.
And my main concern was not the storyline, but what would happen to the actor in that storyline. And I remember talking to the producer about it.
Yeah.
And they did, in fact, pull out all the stops. I think he was on Wogan and all sorts of other programs. And there was a lot of publicity for him that clearly showed that he was an actor, not the character.
Yeah.
And that's really my main memory of that, and my main concern with it, because I did feel that at the time there probably wasn't due diligence in terms of what they gave some of the kids to do, because people really believed, particularly their own age group, that they were like that.
Yeah.
Those characters were them.
Yeah.
And that the way that kind of blurred into being a kind of reality, and the way some of the kids were attacked, particularly, like Gripper Stebson, was very worrying. And I don't think anybody had considered the effect that those storylines had.
That's you being Mrs McClusky there and looking out for him. And I think that's fantastic what you did there.
Well, I think it helped Lee. I think it helped Lee a lot.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And others with storyline like Fleur and the girl gangs and that.
Yeah, I was saying there was
dangerous. So it was dangerous territory because it was all new, that, and it was mirroring real life, and people did begin to, as I say, their own contemporaries, think that was who they were.
Yeah.
So when they were seen, in Civvy Street, so to speak, it was difficult for them.
Yeah. But there was also that year, there was a few other big storylines there. Obviously, we had to Just Say No, and the record came out, and they went, they got to go to the White House and all that. But there was also that year, there was the Faye Lucas and Mr. King relationship, and there was the Ros Partridge, who, heaven forbid, was an unmarried mother. I mean, it sounds daft in this day and age, doesn't it? But in those days, it was a big thing, and obviously you were heavily involved in those storylines as well. And again, that's where we saw the nice side. Not to say the nice side, because Miss McClusky was basically a nice teacher, but the fact that she stuck up for the teachers in those situations, which maybe in this day and age certainly the Faye Lucas, Mr. King one, I don't know if the teacher would get that support.
No, probably not.
No. And then we saw you at the end at the fun run, dressed for the first time as Little Bo Peep. Can I ask, because that does turn up again a couple of series later, was that your own costume or was that wardrobe?
Oh no, that was my oldest friend who I'd met in the youth theatre when we were 16. Turned into a costume designer.
Right.
And so when they were doing this fun run, I asked if I could come up with something that she could make for me.
Right, okay.
She so we decided on Little Bo Peep, and she made that wonderful costume for me. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh no, that's it. So you thought, I'm going to get use out of this, and you used it a couple of times. Is that what that was? Making sure you got some use out of it. Okay, so then I've got to ask you about the donkey, because I know you. I don't think you had that much to do with the donkey, did you?
Thank goodness.
But yeah, Ruth was on the other week, and Ruth was saying about how much she loved doing those bits with the donkey.
Oh, that was mainly a storyline for George Cooper,
Yeah,
wasn't it? Really?
yeah.
Yes.
Lovely
George.
Yeah, absolute star. And then Danny Kendall. So obviously that was a huge storyline at the time. That was a big shock. More so, I thought, than when Jeremy had died, because Danny was such a big character and quite integral to the program. But there is I've spoke to George about this, and I spoke to Ruth about this as well. There's the Danny Kendall Memorial, which is a really serious scene. But when it was getting filmed, everyone was laughing about it, because George said in the rehearsal he'd made a throwaway comment, which everyone was remembering when they were filming the scene. And I just wondered if you'd been aware of how much they were all laughing during that scene.
No, I can't say I was.
Because when you watch it back, there's a few of them. The likes of John Drummond, you can tell, is really stifling a laugh. Ian Congdon has got his hand to his face. And there's a few of them as the camera pans around, you can see that something's happened there. And another thing that happened in that series was the end of year prom, which was a big thing because no one really had proms in those days. And again, it's Grange Hill being a little bit groundbreaking and introducing proms to the UK. So it's Grange Hill's fault that the UK's have proms all the time now. And also, Michael Sheard left that year and was replaced by Mr. Hargreaves, who was very, very different. And Kevin O'Shea, I thought, plays him really well, because he comes across as quite bumbling, but at the same time, he's quite harsh as well, isn't he?
Yes.
What was it like? What was Kevin like?
Kevin's lovely. I'd worked with Kevin before several times on The Gentle Touch.
Oh, right, okay.
Because he was a regular on that, but I was semi-regular, but I did 2 different series playing the same part. Yeah. So yes, I knew Kevin. I haven't seen him for a long time, so at least.
In that series, you were quite involved quite a lot. Again, there was quite a few storylines there with the likes of the animal rights campaign with Ronnie Birtles and the hooliganism with Robbie Wright and Mike Bentley and Matthew Pearson setting fire to his house and stuff. As an adult actor watching these kids, how good is it when you see like their character progression, but also their acting developing as well?
Well, it was great, and actually, what I always felt was that the acting with kids, it's that old story, never act with animals or children. But I used to love it because they can't dissemble. They don't dissemble. Lots of actors act, but kids don't. They just give you what comes off the top of their head. And I used to love that. And it taught me a lot. Actually.
Yeah. And then series 14 comes around, and again, more groundbreaking things was Brian Shaw's leukemia and Chrissy Mannering becoming pregnant.
Sounding an awfully depressing show, isn't it? There were lots of comedy ones and
No,
stuff.
there was loads. I'm just picking up the big storylines.
Yeah.
The stuff that hadn't been done, certainly on kids' television before.
Mm.
And then also we had then Mrs. McClusky announcing that she was taking early retirement. Now, if you don't mind me saying, at first, that comes across as very early retirement because I think
I asked them to write me out.
Right.
I gave them a year to write me out. I just felt that it was, I was becoming, I don't know, it was becoming predictable, and and I just felt it was time to break away. So I had no knowledge of how they were going to do it, and I thought it perhaps could have been something a bit more dramatic, really.
Right, okay. I mean, they couldn't have killed you off. They couldn't have killed Mrs. McClusky off, because that would have been horrendous if they'd done that. But yeah, because at first it was announced as early retirement, and then it was like they must have realised, hang on, she's far too young to take early retirement. So it was written that she had another job teaching.
Yeah, I was going on to train other people to be as marvellous as I was or something.
And then there's that scene where at the leaving party, Julie Buckfield was singing. I never know in things like this. Did you know that was going to happen?
I can't remember. Probably did by the time we'd done it a few times anyway.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So that was 1991 and 169 episodes. IMDb have got listed on Grange Hill. Can I ask, what was the public reaction to Mrs. McClusky like? Was anyone ever scared?
I don't think so, because I think most people sort of thought of me as firm but fair.
Yeah.
And I lived in Brighton at the time, for some of the time that we were filming that. And I remember coming back quite late off the train, and there was nobody around except this guy who had sort of pins through his nose and looked a bit unsavory, who appeared to be, as I quickened my steps, quickening his steps.
Right.
And I thought, I had to get home without some incident. And he suddenly came close to me and he said, excuse me. And I said, yes, like that. And he said, could I just put my arm around you to say, I've done it in your Mrs. McClusky, aren't you? And he was so sweet. And he was like so scared to ask. And then he plucked up the courage.
Yeah.
So he just put his arm around me and said, thank you very much.
Oh.
It was a big relief, but it was nice. And I think it showed, in answer to your question, I think it showed that was the kind of reception that the part got.
Yeah,
really.
I think most people would have loved a head teacher like Mrs. McClusky, because
she had a sense of humor as well, didn't she?
Yeah, definitely.
She wasn't all just authoritarian or anything.
She was firm but fair, like all the best teachers are, aren't they?
Yeah.
Definitely. So what did you do from leaving Grange Hill then? What was your next sort of big role there?
Oh, well, I needed a break. I needed to get back to the theatre, really. That was what I really wanted to do. So, again, serendipity, coming back to the train from the studios in Elstree, there was a Oxfam shop. I used to pop in and buy books, to keep me occupied on the train journey. And I picked up a book called Diary of a Provincial Lady, which had been published in the 30s.
Right.
And it made me laugh out loud on the train.
Right.
And I got home and I said, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to get the rights to this, and I'm going to turn it into a one-woman show.
Right. Wow.
And I did. And then that had spin-offs, because there were other books by the same author, Ian Delafield. and I ended up doing three.
Right. Well.
Three of the books, and a fourth book that I adapted that was done for radio. But the other three I toured with on and off with bits of other television for about 6 years.
Right.
Went to Edinburgh, went all over the country with it. And yeah, that was a really, really happy time. And it was marvelous to have control over the material, the director, the look of it, costumes. My friend Tina came in again and did costumes for me. So that was a kind of intermission, doing something completely and utterly different.
Yeah.
And of course, it did help that I'd been in Grange Hill, because I got quite a lot of publicity from that.
Yeah. Oh, cool. So then, another thing that I wanted to ask you about was, obviously then you turned up in A Touch of Frost and working with David Jason
as a tart.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't going to mention
Never let it be said that I've been typecast.
No, definitely not. Can I ask, is David Jason everything you would expect him to be like?
Yes. I mean, I'd known David's brother, Arthur, for years and years, actually. He lived in Brighton. And also, I was directing quite a bit at this time, and directed Arthur he played Smee for me in Peter Pan. At which David came to see, I think. Yeah, no, I mean, again, it was, and Paul Seed, who directed those episodes, or the first one that I was in anyway. He directed me in the theatre very early on. So again, it was a very happy, it was a very happy time. I enjoyed that very much. Yeah.
Yeah, and as you've said there, you definitely weren't typecast into that role. So then I made a few notes of a few programs. Another one that I always thought was strangely popular was Echo Beach.
Yeah, it flopped like mad, but
there's still like quite a bit of love for it as well. It's almost like a cult, isn't it? Echo Beach.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. I just see things occasionally, like obviously you get people, as you say there, about it flopping, but the people that watched it loved it,
Oh, that's good to know.
Yeah.
But again, that was lovely, working with Jason and Donovan, and it was good fun.
And then the next one I've got is Shaparaka Sandy's Little Cracker, which is heavily Grange Hill based, isn't it? For anyone that doesn't know, it's about Shaparaka Sandy when she was younger, and she'd made this. I think it was a true story, or loosely based on a true story, of how she told people in her school that she could get Todd Carty to go to the Christmas fair, and you play the headmistress in that episode. How did that come about? Did she come to you with that one?
Yes.
Right. Yeah. Okay, because I know that she is a big Grange Hill fan, but obviously they didn't get Todd in on that one, did they?
Oh, there was a shot of Todd at the end, but the young Todd was played by terrific. I mean, he looked just like he was a real doppelganger.
Yeah.
Took my breath away, actually. I can't remember his name. But then Todd appeared at the end in a wedding scene.
Oh, right. Oh, yeah. And then the last thing I want to talk to you about on television is Man Down with Greg Davis, because I think that's brilliant. Anyway, Man Down. How did that come about for you, being in
that? Greg, big fan of Grange Hill.
Yeah, no, because
he wanted he said his dream cast was to have Rick Mayall playing his dad, and Mrs McClusky playing his mum.
Because I was watching a couple of episodes of that the other day, and there was one scene where you give him a proper Mrs McClusky look, and I just thought, I wonder if that's why he got her to be the mum, and now I know the truth there. So I need to ask you, because I mean, this fella was one of my biggest idols. What was it like working with Rick Mayall?
Oh, I can't tell you. He was just just lovely. We got on so well. One of my favorite scenes of anything I've ever done was in one episode where Greg says he's going to do a fun run, or he's going to go
Yeah.
running to keep fit or whatever. And we both start laughing. We just couldn't stop. I mean, his laugh was so infectious, and the two of us were just, if you ever watch that one, we're just rocking with laughter. And we were on most days, actually. It was quite difficult to get some of the scenes done because there was a lot of corpsing went on.
Yeah.
And he, against all of the, the young ones persona, he was such a gentleman. He was so considerate of other people and just a delight. I mean, he was delightful to be with. It was heartbreaking. We were just about to start a second series when he died.
Yeah.
And Greg, everybody, we're just, I mean, we had to have a break because obviously it wasn't certain whether we'd go on to do another series.
Because I know Greg said, I've seen an interview with him on Graham Norton, and he was saying about it. You've mentioned the fantasy casting there because obviously they have got a look of each other. But he said when he rang Rick Mail up to tell him that the show had been commissioned, he said Rick Mail answered the phone and just gave him a height of abuse down the phone, and then was like, "Why are you ringing me?" Basically, like, I don't like to swear on this because my mum might listen to it, so I'm not going to say exactly what he said to him. But he calls him names down the phone, and then when he says, "Well, I want you to be my dad, we've been commissioned," he was like, "Oh right, congratulations," And I just think it must have been amazing to work with him. I mean, throughout your career anyway, you've worked with some amazing actors, haven't you? I've mentioned it early on as well. But for me, out of everyone, working with Rick Mail, just for me on a personal thing, would have been the highlight,
No, it was definitely. I mean, it was a dream job.
Yeah.
It was lovely. I love working with comedians, if there's anybody listening to this. And I have just been working with Lee Mack on a special episode of Not Going Out.
Oh, brilliant.
And again, he's a big fan of Grange Hill.
Right.
And Johnny Vegas I've worked with quite a lot. And again, that was because he was a big Grange Hill fan. And so it's obviously appealed to lots of comedians, and you're just going to laugh all day. And that's, to me, to get paid just to laugh all day is the best thing in the world.
Definitely. That's what they always say, isn't it? Find a job you enjoy doing, and you never have to work another day in your life. That's it. So you're obviously, as you say, you're still acting. Anything else coming up that you're allowed to tell us?
Well, that episode goes out. It's just a sort of one-off episode of Not Going Out, because it's called Jury.
Right.
So Lee Mack finds himself on a jury. So it's not got any of the regulars apart from Lee Mack. So we were all brought in, like Samantha Spiro and people, to do this jury. He's on the jury with hysterical results. So that goes out on April the 22nd, I think.
Right. Okay.
Or, according to Lee, it does. Whether the BBC change track, I don't know. And also, just before that, the work with John Sim on this Grace.
Right.
The detective books. And again, another that was very sweet, actually, because we were waiting to do this scene. I hadn't met John before, but I was a big fan of his. And we were just chatting about, the weather or whatever. And he suddenly stopped in the middle of conversation. He said, "I can't hold this in any longer. I loved Grange Hill." He said, "Your photo went up in the makeup wagon before you arrived, and everybody was so excited." And it's just and now it's just so lucky to have had a job like that for any actor. That down the line, 20 years later, people still remembering the series
Yeah.
and your contribution to it. It's an honour, really, a thrill.
Yeah. Oh, excellent. Can I just ask then, going back to Grange Hill, are you still in touch with anyone from the programme?
Oh, yes. I mean, George,
Oh, yeah.
we WhatsApp each other, and I'm constantly bumping into Lee and Erkan and
Right.
Alison,
Yeah.
Lisa, on various things.
Oh, because you
And
were
they
on
have,
Never Mind the Buzzcocks, weren't you, at Christmas?
yes, that's
Yeah, I
right. Yeah,
remember that one.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So and that was Greg,
Yeah.
rang me up and you come to Elstree in an hour's time. What?
You didn't know what it was for, no?
No, well, he just rang me up. He said we're having a production meeting, and I thought that they were going to do the just say no thing.
Yeah.
And he said, I said I'd ask you if you'd come, and I said yes, but of course, when is it? He said in about 2 hours' time. He's sending a car now. So, yeah.
Amazing.
But that, again, it was lovely. It was lovely to see Greg briefly, and but also to see the kids.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
as I said, I always think of them as my kids,
Yeah. No,
even though
lovely.
they're grown up and bald, quite a lot of them.
Well, because George was telling me about the fact that you're in touch with him a lot now, and he said he would never have thought that would have happened. He said, but it was pointless, wasn't it? It was when you were both
Yes,
on Pointless together,
yes,
and got to the final as well. Excellent, good
yes,
showing there. You did
yes,
well.
yes.
So I've just got a few more questions, Gwyneth. They're all connected to Grange Hill. These last few questions. Now, other than Mrs McClusky, did you have a favourite character on the programme?
I would have to say George A. Cooper.
Right. Yeah, Mr. Griffiths. I mean, you could tell that he perfected his craft, hadn't he? He was a brilliant, brilliant actor, I thought.
Yes,
I love watching his scenes. Maybe as a kid, he came across as maybe a bit pompous and whatever. But when I've watched it back as an adult, I've just thought he's so good. He's so good in that
and
role.
the relationship between the two of them was very
Yeah,
touching, I think.
yeah,
Yeah.
because he had so much respect, didn't he? So much
Yes.
respect for Mrs. McClusky. Would you have liked to have played any other character if you couldn't have played Mrs. McClusky? No.
No.
I mean, if I'd have played Mrs. McClusky, I wouldn't have wanted to have played anyone else either. So the last question then: why do you think there is still this affection for Grange Hill? Why are we still talking about it?
Oh, it's because there were so few television channels, weren't there? So everybody was watching the same thing. It doesn't happen now.
No.
And there was no social media, and there was no interruption. Everybody knew that was on those days, and they rushed home from school to see it. And I think anything that you've watched that's made an impact on you as a child stays with you forever. I did a series called Squadron, and I came back home to my husband, and I was almost speechless with excitement. I said, "You'll never guess who the guest star this week. It's Robin Hood." It was Richard Green.
Right.
And I'd grown up watching
Yeah.
Richard Green as Robin Hood. And there he was. I was acting scenes with him.
Yeah.
And I was, in my 30s then. And I thought that was like the most exciting thing that had ever happened.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the thing I always say about Grange Hill is that it taught a lot of kids a lot about life and things that do go on. Because if it's someone like me I had quite a sheltered childhood. I think that was why my mum and dad let me watch Grange Hill, because it taught me a lot. There are people out there who will maybe try and get you into drugs. People who do have a life of crime, who haven't got the same life as you. And I do think that it taught children an awful lot. And I would like to thank you for being part of it and for being everyone's favourite headmistress, because
it was a real treat and a real privilege, I think. And who knew, when my nieces and nephews persuaded me that it was the best thing going.
Yeah.
They were right.
Yeah. Well, I just want to thank you so much for coming onto the podcast, because it's been.
Well, I'm glad we made it in spite of technical problems.
Yeah. It's been absolutely fantastic for you to come on and give us your view and your insights to it. So thank you so much.
I've loved it. Thank you very much for asking me.
No, you're very, very welcome. Like Ruth, I haven't stopped smiling the whole time. And I've had to resist the urge to call you Miss so many times as well. But no, it's been brilliant. Thanks again. And for anyone that's listening, I'll speak to you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.